4.
Okay, now what I want to ask is, are there any questions from the last time that we met? Because I really want to, for those of you who brought a Bible,
I'm going to save one in there.
for once in a lifetime,
That's a whole lot of wine, isn't it?
I really want to look at 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, begin with the 20th verse. I think I saw something there, but my first question is, are there any questions?
1 Corinthians, what again?
15. We've been there for a while. You know, we started lower, I think about 40, 45, right?
Yes.
This is what I want to look at. But now Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep. For since by a man came death, by a man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, so also in Christ all shall be made alive, but each in his own order. Christ the first fruits, after that those who are in Christ, who are Christ at his coming. I think Barbara touched on that 23rd verse once before when we met.
What verse is it you started at?
First
45?
Corinthians 15th chapter, verse 22, 0.
Okay. Thank you. Barbara did touch on that.
Yeah. Okay, now, her touching it is what really prompted me to revisit it. And in revisiting it, I began to see something here. It said, but now Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruit of those who are asleep. When the word 15,
Chapter 15, verse
It's always one.
chapter 15,
Okay.
verse, Steve, help me.
Ooh, 0.
I will put on the board, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the thing up on the
Yeah.
side.
The word Christ, when we talked about it, you remember Barbara went to the root of that word. And it talks about to furnish everything that's needed. So when we talk about the idea of messianic awareness or Christ consciousness, right? We are talking about being aware of everything that's needed at that moment.
Multi-breasted one?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Being aware of everything that's needed at that moment. Now, what I am saying is a bit more than just that statement, because to be aware of what is needed at that moment is also to be what is needed. If Messiah is furnishing what's needed, then and Messiah is talking about Christ consciousness or messianic consciousness or messianic awareness, right? Mm-hmm. It's being aware of what's needed, so that you can furnish it. You cannot furnish anything. You cannot provide anything that you're not, because we're not talking materially. I'm not talking about Audrey needing an orange and being able to furnish the orange for her. I'm talking about Audrey needing to move beyond stress and being able to talk through it. Or I'm talking about Evelyn getting through an emotional crisis. I'm talking about doing it not from the perspective of medication, but from the perspective of helping you to see who you are. Are you following me? Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, it said, but Christ has been raised from the dead. That is taken as a man who was crucified being resurrected. That could not be further from the truth. What's actually being said is that the concept or the awareness of what's needed has been elevated from a place of death. Death and sleep are the same in the scriptures. Death is to be separated from the light. Death is being separated from the light and the spirit. To give you an example of that, death is being separated from the sun and the air. If you don't have sunlight, you don't live. If you don't have air, you don't live. So a manifestation of death in the physical realm is being separated from like the sun and the air, or being separated from the light and the spirit in the spiritual realm, in the other world, I should say. Okay, are you following me so far? So, what it's actually saying is that Paul is actually saying in this writing that the awareness of the messianic awareness is being elevated from a place of death, or from a place of the delusion of being separated. It's being elevated. Now, elevation does not mean being lifted up as in a physical manner, but it's taking a place of prominence in you. It's being awakened in you. And it being awakened in you is talking about you becoming aware that regardless of what is needed, you're it. And it's not regardless of what's needed only for you, regardless of what's needed for mankind, period, you're it. Now, when you become aware of that, you also become aware that it is necessary for the worlds that we live in to merge. If we continue to believe that we live in separate worlds, then we continue to perpetuate the idea of separateness. The unicity of our being comes into question when we perpetuate the concept of separateness. I live in my own little world, and the heck with yours, that kind of thing. And that is pretty much the way of thinking that most of us were reared up with. Not so much the heck with yours as is I live in my own world, I got to take care of mine, and if anything is left, I'll help you with yours if I feel like it. That has to go. If we don't get beyond thinking in physical material terms, we will never get to the place where we become aware messianic. We will never get to the place where we are aware of our messianic nature. If everything we get has to be explained in physical terms, we're done. Jesus said, why should I tell you about heavenly things when you don't understand earthly? So we never get to who we are without getting beyond the earthly, this material nature in terms of where we think, and moving to the place of enlightenment in terms of the way we think. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Right? So we have to change the way we think. I remember saying to you many, many years ago and many, many times, if you don't do anything, you're going to think for yourself. I will force you to think. I've said that to you many, many times. Why? Because one of the first things that I noticed about the church is that you check your ability to think at the door. Because if you begin to think, you begin to raise questions. And if you begin to raise questions, you begin to challenge things. And the things that you begin to challenge are the foundational things that you have held onto all your life, and others have as well. And for the most part, no one is willing to pay, well, most people, I won't say no one, but most people are not willing to pay the price that it takes in order for you to become aware of the messianic nature that you are. It's a heck of a price to pay. Because you clearly have to change not only the way you think, but the way you deal with each other. And you won't do that without changing the way you deal with yourself. So when he talks about Messiah being raised from the dead, which is the first fruit, it's talking about the first of everything that is. And if you don't understand that the first fruits has its root in what it had in its origin, whatever a fruit is, it has its root in its origin. You will not find an apple coming from a tree with pear tree roots or pecan roots, right? So how can you expect to begin to see who you are, the nature of your essence? How can you do that if your roots are still in Babylon? You have to be uprooted from Babylon. You have to be uprooted from Catholicism. You have to be uprooted from those things that have placed you in bondage in order for the messianic nature to be elevated. Am I making sense? And I know what I'm talking about is highly controversial, but quite frankly, I don't give a rat's butt about it being controversial at all. And I understand that there are people who are so deeply rooted in the church that they don't want to hear anything else. I'm not concerned about that either. What you want to hear, don't want to hear. The truth of the matter is that, for example, the whole idea of the Christmas celebration didn't come from the scriptures. It came from the Catholic Church. And it was instituted in the Catholic Church in I think it's the 4th century. Prior to that, the celebration of December 25th was even before that. It came out of Babylon. Nimrod's son Tammuz, him and what's her name? It started with Esme something. Anyway, his wife had a baby, and they called him Tammuz, and she instituted
for security purposes,
a ceremony believing that Tammuz would be resurrected on his birthday, which was December the 25th. That came out of Babylon. And it entered into Catholicism simply because the Romans conquered what they call pagans who were worshiping had festivals on that day looking for that. And in order to quell the Pope and the Roman authorities instituted a day called the Mass of Christ. And that's where Christmas came from. And that's the reason it's December 25th. So if you're rooted in that, then you cannot be expected to produce a different kind of fruit other than what you're nurtured with. Now do you understand what I'm trying to get you to see? So the reason it is necessary to be uprooted from all of that is so that you can be rooted in something that is real. So when you return to Babylon, you will have something to offer rather than something to perpetuate that's not true. And I guess this is a good place to tell you that I feel very strongly that I'm getting ready to move back into Babylon. Not in the sense that I was there in the past, but in the sense of my presence being there, because there are some things that needs to be taught. So I'll probably be going back into the association, not as a member, but as a visitor. Because there are some things that need to be taught, not to leadership. Leadership will not change because it's not in their best interest to change. It costs too much. But to the people who are involved, that's who needs to be reached. So, the idea of the messianic awareness of the messianic nature being awakened, and then it says this happens because by a man came death, and by a man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die. Okay, this whole concept of a man, since by man came death, this concept of a man has nothing to do with a man as we see men, like mankind. Has nothing to do with that at all. However, if you look at the translation that we find anthropos, which in actuality it should be Adam. Because death came through the man, Adam. You understand what I'm saying? That's where the separation from light came, in terms of the delusion, right? Yeah. Came from Adam. So it must be Adam who brings life. Right. In other words, you messed it up, you fix it. So, what are we saying? What we're saying, what's being said is that Adam, El, is God, dumb essence, or that the divinity, God's essence in this entity, or the essence of God in this entity that was created. Okay? The essence of God in this entity that was created. Now, if you look at the creation, you will find that in that first chapter, it's only Elohim. And it doesn't begin to say Lord until I think the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter. Lord God, Yahweh Elohim. So the essence of Elohim is in this entity that we called Adam. Okay? Got that? Mm-hmm. Now, this is the kicker. The death did not come until Yahweh and Elohim formed the man from the dust of the earth, the Adam. So what does that mean? The death did not come until the thoughts were formed in this entity. When the thoughts were formed in this entity and the decision was made to separate or to believe that there is a possibility or way of separation, then that's when death came. So if death came by virtue of that, then in order for life to come, first thing that happens is everything that you need to live or for life to come or to realize the essence that you are must be awakened in you. And when that is awakened, the journey towards an understanding of who you really are begins. And it does not begin because Yahweh forces you to do it. It does not begin because Elohim forces you to do it. It began because you have a desire to do it. That's where the journey began, once this is awakened. The objective is, and to borrow from Ron some things that he's looking at, the objective is of the adversary is to push us in that direction, towards light. But what has happened, we have allowed the adversary, or we have accepted rather, the adversary as the God. And we have diminished ourselves beneath who we were created to be. So we allowed the adversarial thought to mold us as opposed to us taking the adversarial thoughts and molding them. In other words, using them as a tool to do the right thing and to move in the right direction. Are you following me? So
one question, Pastor.
Yes, sir.
The way you define...
May I ask a question, too? Can I get some water?
Yes. Well,
go ahead. Nicky, go ahead. Thank you, Nick.
The way you define death in verse 20, now you just went back to creation and talked about death. Show me the difference here, because that's something different.
Both,
right?
There is no difference. Both of them, it's a delusion. There is no separation from light
right.
and spirit. There is,
Okay.
because the scripture clearly talks about him being closer than our breath. Thank you. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
So there is no separation. It is all in the way we think about it.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
And because clearly, if there were a separation, then the messianic essence would not be sleep. It would be absent. So there isn't one. Even when Paul talks about being absent from this physical body, he doesn't say to be absent from the body is to be present with God. He said the Lord, doesn't he? Yahweh. Because when you become aware that you are Elohim, then this body is no longer viable. Ask Enoch. You don't necessarily need this anymore. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
Why would you say you're not necessarily needed?
The reason I
not needed.
The reason I say you don't necessarily need it is because there may be a purpose for you to use it, as Jesus used his.
Oh, to come back.
To come back, yes,
Gotcha.
as Jesus used his.
Okay.
So it may be necessary.
Okay.
So anyway, any other questions? So when we look at it, then it talks about, when it talks about resurrecting the dead, right? Resurrection of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Truth is awakened. Resurrection is about truth. Truth is awakened. That's what it's talking about. The most difficult thing, it seems, for people who say that they're religious, or the religion means to reconnect to the Creator. Those who say that, one of the most difficult things to do is to help them resurrect truth, because we are so comfortable the way that we are. I mean, look at the number of people who are going to lose sleep tonight doing something that they really don't want to do. Now, I ain't want to, because I'm going to be doing what I really want to do. but there are going to be people who are going to lose sleep tonight doing something they really don't want to do, but they feel pressured to do it because they feel like they're supposed to be in church when the new year comes in.
I was one of them.
You know, all of us wanted it at one point, you know. I mean, think about this. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a basis for this. Because like in 46, 45 BC, Julius Caesar instituted this transitional thing in tribute to the god Janus. That's where January comes from. The god Janus, who was the guardian to the gate or doorway, leaving behind and entered into a new gateway. And Janus had two faces, one looked back, one looked forward. So that's where this came from. So the idea of entering a gateway truly is legitimate. But to pressure people to feel like if you don't be in church when the new year come in, you're going to be out of church the rest of the year. Or if your house is dirty when the new year come in, you're going to be dirty the rest of the year. Then that's just simply because you're not going to please him. It's not because, it just doesn't make sense. So when the attempt to resurrect truth in people is made, they usually recoil to what they're comfortable with, and you become the idiot, and they are the one who has all the answers. But you have to get comfortable being an idiot. You have to be strong enough to stand on principle. You have to, your foundation may not be understood by you, but it must be accepted by you. You might not understand the foundation of it all, but you accept the foundation of it all. Can you see the difference in the two? that you have to do that if you're going to move forward, because you are going to be continuously confronted with these adversarial thoughts manifested through people, especially those who are close to you, and give you a guilt trip about not being in church at 12 o'clock. And we did it. You know, we did it. I mean, I'm the reverend, and we were in church at 12 o'clock. And at 12:30, we were at my house party. And when I say we, I'm talking about all the folk that was in the church with us. That, you know, in our age group, of course. All of us were there doing the same thing that I'm doing at the bar. But anyway, but the contradiction there is that all the partying was supposed to be bad. So after you leave the church, you go home and you go to bed and get up and eat some black-eyed peas and collards on New Year's, so you can have some pennies and some dollars. If that's the case, if it's all about the money thing, don't eat the peas, just eat the collards. leave the peas alone. That pen is too heavy to carry around. I mean, you see, all of these things are there because they're easy to do. No one really wants to struggle. How many of you want to struggle? I do. I really like struggling. I haven't always, but I do now. I like struggling. And you better love it. Because if you don't learn to love the struggle, you'll never enjoy being a butterfly, because you won't be it. You'll always be a caterpillar, you'll die in the cocoon.
Well, although we struggle, do we really have to like it?
Yes, ma'am. You like it because you know the reason for it. I mean, understand what I'm saying to you.
Doesn't mean it has to feel good.
No.
It doesn't.
I know
Yeah.
what you're saying.
I mean, it's like getting in condition for a sport. You know, I don't feel good about it, but after it's over with, it feels good.
Okay, so can we say we don't feel good about it then, but we know.
What I am saying to you is this: if you put in your mind that there's something you don't like, whenever it happens to you, rather than saying, you know what, I know something great coming out of this,
That's better.
you be saying, what you be saying is, I'll be glad when it's over with.
That's better.
You see?
Yes.
And I know I'm at a point in my life where I'm not saying I'm glad when it's over with. It's over when it's over. And guess what? It ends much quicker.
I think a lot of the problem is we don't understand the difference between struggle and suffering. We see it as being one and the same, and it's two totally different things. For example, suffering is, I have this in my bank account, I have this job, I drive this car, and this is my world. If anything happens to bring that out of balance, it upsets me. You know, if I lose a job, if the money disappears, if the car tears up, now I'm out of balance because I've allowed this to define who I am. But that's totally different than recognizing who you are and recognizing the fact, you know what, whatever happens, happens. This is all for my good. That's tough to do.
So which one is that?
That's the suffering. I mean the struggle. What I'm saying is, one is the difference between the two is the mindset. The mindset. One, you define yourself by the stuff and your status, and the other one is, I accept whoever I need to be to become true. And there's a difference there.
I would see that as the other way around. Maybe I'm looking at it differently. Because I think suffering is one of those things where you're going through something most of the time that you really have no control over.
I say that's semantics.
We struggle with, you go through something that you have no control over, but you accept that I gotta go through this to get.
See, I just see the semantics.
Maybe it helps. A number of years ago, I read a very interesting book, I thought, about fear, and how fear is really a very positive and galvanizing energy. It's viewed as a very negative thing, but that's if it's confused with an anxiety that's associated with a consequence, right? Which is how we get confused and things happen to people because they are afraid, but they don't trust their instinct to act on that, so they rationalize and blah, blah, blah. So maybe the suffering is more combining the struggle or combining the feeling of what situation you're in with a sense of a negative consequence, a hopelessness or something like that. You're too focused on not where you are and what you're going through, which is the struggle, which is the exercise to make you healthier. You're more consequence of, is it going to get me far enough? Am I going to get out of this? And then you're distracted by that, and you feel the weight of that, and you suffer under it, so to speak.
And
It's different mindsets, but either way, you bringing them on yourself.
always.
Well, because
you're the cause of it.
you define. I'm saying you're defining yourself. You're limiting what the struggle could produce by your focusing on. Am I making enough progress?
The
Am I
outcome
far
you
enough
want.
where I should be? Can I manage all these
Yeah.
things at one time? So you're putting that weight on yourself to hold yourself back.
And
That's-
fear is a very big part of it.
Fear. The moment that you feel something, it becomes your God. Because whatever you feel like it's superior to you and your abilities to handle.
Well, I'd argue a little bit with that. Again, it's how you react to that. Fear can be nothing more than a very full awareness of something.
Then you've overcome it.
The question is how you act on that awareness.
If you fear something, at that moment, you are inferior to it. The moment that you rise above it, it becomes inferior to you.
The very
Hear what I'm saying. When the scripture talks about fear God, that word fear is reverence. And what I am saying is this. Fear comes from a belief that you cannot handle what's in front of you, even though you may handle it later. At that moment, you feel like you can't. Because if you feel like you can handle it, there is no fear. Example, if your car stops on you today, out there on that road, and no other cars are coming, it's like, well, I got to find a way, But let it happen 2 o'clock in the morning. It's a whole different mindset. You see what I'm talking about? Why? Because you feel helpless and vulnerable. So how come you didn't feel vulnerable at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? It's the same spot. No car, no movement, but the difference is the darkness. That's what I'm talking about. But when you get to a place where at 2 o'clock in the morning you're there and you say, you know what? What happens, happens. I can't change it, because if I could, the clock's straight. And you move from there. That's all I'm saying. And what happens is you will find that when you come to grips with that, it strengthens you. It actually strengthens you. And I've said to you 1,000 times, I don't remember being afraid. And it's not because I'm the bad dude. It's just that I've never feared death, number one. I've never feared death. So, what's the worst thing a person thinks can happen to them? That they die or they be killed. That doesn't faze me. It has never fazed me. So, as a result of that, in retrospect, I see that there was preparation for something now. You see, it wasn't me per se, but it was preparation for what I am to do. If I were afraid of things, then I never would be doing this. Because there are fears that are greater than death. And one is isolation from people that you hold dear to your heart. Fear of being pushed out and left all alone, especially when someone who has the power to bring it about says to you, the moment that you lose this church, you're going to be on your own. We're going to make sure you don't get another. And then set out to help you lose it. And for me, my response to be, the hell with that. You ain't God. And if you can do that, I don't need it anyway. And keep it moving. That in itself, rather than cause me to recoil, it invigorated me. I was determined then that I was going to do what I saw I needed to do regardless of the consequences. Because if the God that I trust was not able to help me through this, I'm wrong anyway. That's how I dealt with it. And Phoebe said, and she tell you, I had all kinds of threats of what were going to happen to me. And they did things. You know, I mean, preaching 4 or 5 times a Sunday may not mean nothing to you, but in the preaching world, I was a big dog. And gone from that to 0, not gradually, but instantly. So what I'm saying is that it wasn't that I'm so much better than anyone as much as it was preparation for something. The foundation was being laid without me being aware of it. All I knew, now at that time, don't get me wrong, I wasn't thinking about no foundation being laid. At that time, I'm thinking, ain't nothing you can do to me. And it was because of the God I served. I believe that because I heard what happened when I was called. The other thing was, I was smarter than them. That's how I felt. And it turns out I was, because I kept on the pathway as opposed to the intellectual thing. So anyway, I think that was a part of the truth beginning to resurrect. That was the part of the truth beginning to resurrect. I don't think that Jesus said, if it be thy will, let this cup pass from me, because he was afraid. I think he said it because he felt like it wasn't time for him to go. So anyway, next verse. Boy, I'm moving fast. Hey. For as in Adam. Now, this verse is explained in verse 21. For as in Adam, all die. You see that? Mm-hmm. So also, in Christ, all shall be made alive. What is he saying? He's saying, because of that, the essence, how it was dealt with, all of us feel like we are separated. But when the messianic essence is awakened, then we will begin to experience life. Because life is not only desiring, but realizing that you have never been separated from the source. Mm-hmm. Life is realizing that you have never been separated from the source.
Is that the resurrection?
Of truth. The realization of it is resurrecting truth. Mm-hmm. Life is realizing you've never been separated from the source. You began to see that though this body is here, it is not you. And the thing about it is, you've always known that. But you have not realized you've known it. You have never said body. You say my body. Who is the mind that the body belongs to? You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So we have realized it. I mean, we've known it, but we have not been aware of what we are saying. My head hurts. You see? So in that sense, in that instance, you are actually separating the mind from the body. you're realizing that this is not the essence of me. Does that make sense? That we know this. But in our knowing, we have been blind. We have been blinded to this. And the reason that we are blinded to it, we're blind to it, the reason we're blind is because we see through two eyes and not the third eye. And as long as we look for light through these eyes, all the light we will ever see will be the sun that we created. That's all we'll ever see. How many of you notice that when we right after the teachers met, well, actually a couple weeks before that, when we were talking about we have to bring into focus the elevation of feminine energy, that it seemed like every time we looked around the moon was full. Mm-hmm. How many of you realize that?
Yeah.
So what made that happen? Because we determined that it represents feminine energy because it receives light from the sun. So as long as we see through these eyes, we will only see the light that we created. But when we began to see through the third eye, we began to see the light that we are. When you see through the third eye. I've been wrestling with something. And the thing that I've been wrestling with is that a whole new world was created when cultures such as the Mayans died out. A whole new world came into being. That was the end of the world. And the world that came into being was a world where men saw with their eyes and thought with their brains and let their mind go astray. And was unable to see anything from that point on. I've been seeing this. I can see flickers of it even as I speak of it. And I'm riding and I see almost a translucent curtain between the ears. And the necessity of what took place, as brutal as it was. And it's on the T-shirt, you know, the Native Americans on this T-shirt. We've been fighting terrorism since 1492. You know, the brutality of what happened with that was necessary. Because men had become comfortable being men as opposed to God. If you look at that 82nd Psalm, it tells you clearly that you have become comfortable supporting wickedness. You have become comfortable embracing the powerful and minimizing the importance of those who you perceive as being less powerful. You take advantage of orphans, those who don't have anyone to protect them. You take advantage of them. But you were not created to do that or to be that. You were created to defend them. But if you don't do this, you're going to die like men. Is that not what it said?
Yes.
So as long as we see through these eyes, we see the light that we created, and the light that we created is actually darkness. And if the eye is dark, then the whole body is dark. And the whole body that's dark is not this body. The whole body that's dark is the body that we are. And the darkness is not the absence of light. The darkness is confusion. We're confused about who we are. We talk about my body, but at the same time, we don't understand what we are saying. We talk about the elevation we talk about seeing into another world, but at the same time, we don't understand what we are saying. We talk about being our brother's keeper. We talk about being of one blood, but we don't understand it. That's the confusion. That's the darkness in the whole body. But if your eye be single, then light is in the whole body. And that single eye is the third eye. And we have become so intellectually driven until we have lost sight of the ignorance that we live in every single day. There was more of an understanding prior to cultures like that being brought to an end or eliminated. And the rituals of Native Americans and rituals of people in the East, when those things were brought to an end, the more they were brought to an end, the more confused we became. And the more confused we became, the more gods we began to create. And we created our gods out of confusion. Because we feel like we do not have everything that's needed in order for us to see that we are light. So we allow others to define it. When I say others, I'm talking about other parts of us to define it. Rather than allow the adversarial thoughts to drive us towards the light, we embrace the adversarial thoughts and call them light. So So the life comes through the same Adam that death came through. That same essence. In other words, if Adam is the essence of God, then it is the essence of God that brings about light. It is the essence of God that brought about darkness. Look at Isaiah. What does Isaiah say? God says, I made the light and the darkness. I created, what is it? Something. But you understand the gist of what I'm saying. Now, he's saying that, right? Because it happened in that second chapter of Genesis in that 7th verse. Everything that we are or think that we are goes back to that. I think it's Isaiah 43 and 7.
43 and 7.
I think that's what it is.
Or 45.
Huh?
45, I thought.
45, I don't know. It's in the book. One of y'all find
I formed the light and created darkness.
Who's the I? Go up.
You want me to read verse 6 then?
I want you to read who's speaking.
The Lord.
What did it say?
I am the Lord and there is none else.
Stop right there. I am who?
The Lord.
I am Yahweh. And go ahead.
I am, and there is none else. I formed the light and created darkness. I make peace and I create evil.
Stop right there. That's Yahweh, not Elohim. That happened in that 7th verse of that 2nd chapter when Yahweh and Elohim took the dust of the earth and formed Adam, of the man. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, it says, I didn't look at that word order. Who got blew that up? Click it.
Which scripture?
Order, 23rd verse.
Togma.
What?
Oh, I was saying it in the.
I don't know what that means. That worse than me looking at it at all, Mr. Shells.
That which has been arranged or placed in order.
That which been arranged.
Yeah.
The body of soldier, a corpse.
Is that the
band,
primary rule?
troop, class.
No.
No. Hold on. To put in order to station.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's talking about an arrangement, right? But each in his own order, right? Messianic nature is what? The first fruits, right? After that, those who are Christ at his coming. Now, there's something interesting about this word coming. Let me get to this first. But each in his own order, that Messianic nature being the first fruit. In order for the Messianic nature to be the first fruit, its root has to be in the source of its nature. Does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
In order for the Messianic nature to be the first fruit, then its root has to be in the source of its nature. Everything that it is foundationally, everything that nurtures it, everything that it draws from, has to come from its origin. And its origin is Yahweh and Elohim. Is it not?
Mm-hmm.
The doctrines, the dogma, the principles, the attitudes, the religious whatever that we have has its roots in us. We are so adverse to truth, it seems, until as much as we say we love each other, we do not have songs in the church that sing about loving each other. We love Jesus. We had to go to Older Red and tell him I've been loving you too long. I mean, you see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And on the surface it's like, well, you don't want to bring those secular songs in here. What it's actually doing is perpetuating separation.
Yeah.
Because if I talk about loving Jesus and you're not Jesus, then I can say I love you, but the expression of it, we have rendered it vulgar. But guess what? We like it. So there's another contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. Think about what the discussion was earlier when we were broadcasting. You know, love will make you ride a bus.
Yeah.
Love will make you walk. I mean, it does. But we don't want to talk about those things when they are the foundation of who we are. We cannot exist. And I'm not talking about these bodies. I'm talking about, the spectrum of Adam, the spectrum of Ish and Isha. We cannot exist. We will never exist the way we were designed to exist until we come together as one. And there has to be examples of that.
So, can I ask a question?
Let me think about it. Go ahead.
So, a headache is a result of the confusion that's going on with us?
Yeah. I mean, you jokingly said, God, my headache is gone. All the kids out the house.
Yeah, grown and gone, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, but it is. Everything in these bodies is a manifestation of something else that's going on in terms of the energy fields. Everything.
Mm.
I mean, if you can actually see your aura with, the natural eyes, you see it, you will see color changes with emotions. You see color changes with different illnesses that affects the body. You'll see that. When the energy flow is interfered with between the chakras, anything may happen to you. You have to desire to maintain balance. And the cost for maintaining balance is taking you out of your comfort zone. Because the comfort zone that we have created is one of, well, whatever it is, I don't even care no more. If it makes me happy, I'm going to do it. And that, you can't live like that. Not in living, in balance, okay? And honestly, there are things that happens in this earth that are necessary to perpetuate an example of what love is, of how we come back together, to bring the energy for that kind of thing. There are things that happen constantly in this realm to perpetuate those things. we're not aware of them. You know why? Because most of them we have condemned.
We said put it in a box.
Yeah, put it in a box, yeah.
Compartmentalized.
And then the reason we put it in a box, you know, sometimes we don't want to condemn. We just put it in a box because we want to take it out of here once in a while. But the thing that we condemn is the thing that we can't do no more. Not won't, can't. So, but anyway, when we look at this, the fruit having its origin, its roots and its origin, that's what comes first. And after those, the messianic nature at his coming. That should not be there.
His.
No, coming. It should be presence as opposed to being absent. It's saying that those who are made aware of the presence, that's who comes. That's who appears then. You see that? See what's happened. If I can keep you waiting for something, it's like the horse or the mule with the carrot on the stick. He's never going to get the carrot, but he keeps on pulling. If I can keep you wanting something, waiting for something, then I can continuously control you and control how you think and how you respond. But if I say to you that everything that you are has never left, and everything that you need is not external, it's in all of us. Whether you view it as being good, bad, or indifferent, you need it. And the purpose of it is for you to become the patch in the quilt that you were supposed to be, so that the quilt can be made whole. Does that make sense? Other pieces of puzzle. Then that 24th verse, when the awareness is there, then what happens? The end. There is the end.
In the world.
What you think? And I'm not trying to be facetious at all. The end of what? The end of time.
Time we know.
I did not say the end of existence. The end of time. Right. Because that's when everything becomes spiritual. That's when we began. See, I was talking to Ron earlier this morning. And one of the things that I made mention of is that if we, as a quote unquote people, genuinely desire truth, time would go just like that. There you go. Just a genuine desire. We have a genuine desire for beneficial truth when it benefits us, as opposed to desiring truth regardless of the consequences. You know that scripture, what is it? It's in 2 Peter, where it says that I wish you will be prosperous and in good health. Anybody familiar with that? Y'all know y'all been in prosperity ministries. Except for Richard, the Episcopalian don't say that.
I've never heard that.
What?
I mean, I've never seen it in the script. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, because you don't read
That's
Third John.
What do you say?
3 John 1 and 2.
What, read it.
Give me 1 second.
Say, what'd you say, Bessie?
Isn't that I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that word, prosper, talks about your journey. You ain't gonna do no money. It really talks about your journey.
Yep.
Am I right?
To grant a prosperous and expeditious journey, to lead by a direct and easy way.
That's what it's talking about. That's what I'm saying about us having light, or our light, our darkness, we're making it light. You see? Because that prosperity is talking about, as we put it forth, want you to be comfortable in terms of materialism. When in actuality, it's talking about your journey to righteousness. That's what it's talking about. Has nothing to do with that at all. At all. Sit.
It is 3 Peter 1 and 2.
3 Peter 1 and 2.
The only thing they did was prosper and travel, make up the word, and they just threw the travel out.
Yeah. So what he's saying is that his desire is also for your soul to journey peacefully. And to journey peacefully so that this end can come is not for you to avoid problems, or what we call problems, struggles. It's not to avoid them. It's to face them head on. Yes, sir.
And to go back with what you were saying before in Thomas, the scripture that correlates to what Jesus said. I think you said, Yahweh said, Jesus said, I have cast fire upon the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes.
Okay. Would you care to elaborate?
So, when you talk about all the struggles are being caused on purpose. The purpose for you to go on that journey that he was just talking about, as far as it being prosperous journey and expedited. So it's basically that is a process that needs to take place, and it's not that we perpetuate our struggles or what we view or think as struggles upon ourselves. They're only there for a purpose. So once you do not, in Eastern thought they will call it the way, or to line back up with truth. When we don't do that, we just perpetuate it and make it harder, or we just go through the same thing over and over again. So basically what he's saying here is, I don't want you to do that. I want you to go through this journey and basically get back on truth without just going around in circles your entire earthly life.
You without going to church.
Circles, church.
Yes. I want you to do this without going to church.
I just want you to do it and go straight to the point.
Yeah.
I want you to hurry up and do it. That's being prosperous. Hurry up and get the truth, basically.
Any questions about that? Because it not only is it needed, guess what? It's going to happen. There's nothing any of us can do to stop it from happening. You're going to have struggles.
That also explains why during your struggles, there's been talked about here in the past, where all your struggles start off as being very light, but until you correct something, it is perceived to get worse and worse and worse and worse. That's to put you back on track. You're like, listen, dummy, this is not the right way.
Yeah.
Turn around.
Let's back up a moment. When you said circle,
Yeah.
So we won't travel in circles. I say that means don't go to church, because church comes from the word that means circle. That's the origin of the word church, is circle.
I told you I stopped calling this church.
Yeah, you did. And the reason I say that is because there are others watching who may not who may not understand the origin of that word church, and the reason I said what I did. So, because it does, when we really, really think about it, those of us who came from different settings, if we go right back to those settings, they're doing the same thing. The only thing that's different in those settings, the robes may be different. And the news that's coming across the pulpit might be different. But everything else is the same.
Different suit, but it's the same.
Same monkey.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
You throw something at them.
Oh God, I didn't mean it in that light.
I know we mess with you. But it is the same.
Too late.
Yeah.
Can't fix it.
Hey, hey, Elmer, we gonna edit you out. But anyway, but that's what we mean by the circle thing, and we have to make that kind of decision, because when we make that kind of decision, it's not we making that kind of decision for Foundation or for Greater Faith or for that Monday night class or for any group. It's we making that decision for everything that is. Because everything that is affected by the desires that we express or manifest. Everything is affected by that.
I didn't want to miss looking at this chapter you just went over, how he ties all of mankind together on the Adam level and on Christ. But you notice he doesn't say anything about Jesus. He talks about Christ. And if you look in the 14th chapter, he talks about God. And now he goes and starts talking about the Christ. So, I mean, he ties us all together for us to see that this is you on every level. That this is mankind at every level. So all of us should be able to see yourself in this.
Well, and if you really look at the epistles of Paul, very, very rarely will you see Jesus. Very rarely. You see, he made reference to Christ and Elohim. But very rarely does he say Jesus the Christ. Very rarely. Because he understands something that he's expressing without saying it. It is finished. I've shown you the way. I've given you the expressions that you need to see who you are. I have left with you a mirror. The question is, will you close your eyes so you can see? Or will you keep them open and remain blind? That's the question. There is a reason that people close their eyes when they want to talk to God. It's a reason. With your eyes open, what you actually see are distractions. It's a manifestation of your deep-rooted desire to see with the third eye as opposed to two. That's the thing that's asleep in us, that deep-rooted desire. That's the messianic consciousness. A few years ago, we were talking about the coming of the messianic awareness. But Father has granted us permission to be able to see that because of the deep desire, that's what we saw at that time. But now he has revealed something else to us. That it is not coming, it's present, it needs to be awakened. He's telling us that it's not dead in terms of the absence of life. When you're asleep, you still have life. You're just not aware of your surroundings. So he's granted us opportunity now to see this. And he said, when you see this, it is this messianic consciousness that delivers the kingdom to God and the Father. What is he talking about? Kingdom is principles. It talks about principles and consciousness. So it makes you aware of the principles and consciousness. Now the deliver up to, Ron,
Yes, sir.
this morning, when you read that chapter from Job,
Yeah,
that's it. When the sons of God presented themselves.
right.
You see?
Yeah,
At this point, the presentation, in other words, you become aware that you never left where you were from the beginning. And look at what it says. It does not say to God. It says to Elohim and Yahweh. Because it all started there in that 7th verse of that 2nd chapter. You see?
what is in?
Shemitah?
Come in the end.
End talks about the end of time.
Okay, so there's
Not time in terms of, the end of
right.
existence. It's not like, and it does not say rapture. Rapture came about in 1854 was it? When this dude would run around preaching, tent preaching, and he started talking about folk being raptured, and the good folk going to heaven, and the other folk will be left here, and then he gonna come back for them. That's not the says 3 coming. But anyway,
It happened in 2000. It happened in 2010.
he saw that it drew people.
Yeah,
And because it drew people, he crossed the country preaching the rapture. It has no basis in Scripture at all. It has its foundation in a man's sermon that drew crowds. So he talks about the end. Not the end of existence, but the end of time as we know it. And the rule that's abolished, the authority and the power, that's us, the stuff that we have right now. It brings an end to that. We talk about bringing stuff on ourselves that we have issues with, right? Mm-hmm. It brings an end to that. Mm. We talk about putting stuff in a box. That's rules, setting boundaries. Right. It brings an end to that. And whether you accept it or not, you have the power to create. You do it all the time. It brings an end to that. Because now that you can see clearly, you see who you are, and you see all of these things that were never real from the beginning. They were simply distractions. And if you see them as distractions, then they become tools. But if you see them as being real, then they become gods. If you recognize this is a distraction, it's just like saying, this is a deception. Well, if you know it's a deception, you're not being deceived. Think about it.
And you render it as having no power as well.
Right. You speak well, my son. Wax on, wax off.
He's doing it, right? Going through the motion.
So anyway, are there any questions? Because I'm going to stop here if there aren't. Okay, I have no clue as to where we will go from here, because it seems as though every time I say that we're going to do this next week, then it never happens. The recipients truly become the teachers by virtue of the questions that are raised or the energy that's received.
Correct to us.
So that you are the syllabus. And I don't even know what I'm gonna be sitting in next week or not. You know? So anyway. Any questions? Okay. To everyone, have a great year. This gateway is going to be tremendous. It's going to be more visible. The changes are going to be more visible than ever before. And the visibility of them is not just going to be with those who are seeking. They're going to be manifestations that those who wondering whether it's real or not are going to see. Choices are going to have to be made. Decisions are going to be made concerning a huge amount of things. And when I'm talking about decisions that got to be made, people are going to decide whether or not they are going to remain connected to Babylon, or whether they're going to disconnect from Babylon and realize who they really are. And that's going to happen by virtue of intimacy between the masculine and the feminine birthing things into the earth. And I use the word things very loosely, okay? All right, I'm done. I'm done. Let's go. Not yet. Let's dismiss first. Dismiss.
If we desire to prosper, to not go in circles, but to be in unity with the Creator. Amen.
Okay.